Good evening. My name is Sanshin Oberholtzer. I'm the resident priest and guiding teacher at the Joseph Priestley Zen Sangha in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. We're part of Empty Moon Zen. Standing in the field behind our house is the sole remaining oak, once part of a pair of massive oaks, its partner since torn out by the roots in a passing windstorm some 3 years ago, leaving the survivor of that pair, a pair which was itself, no doubt, the last remnant of a forest of old-growth trees, cut down to make way for cornfields in the last century. An ancient oak, standing alone in a way so unlike trees in the wild. There's a popular image of the tree standing firm, erect, alone, an image as false as the nickname Old Hickory given to Andrew Jackson after the tree beloved in his Tennessee following the War of 1812. That tree standing in the field behind my house could stand in for Yggdrasil, the immense sacred tree essential to Norse cosmology. Around it exists the entire universe, including the 9 worlds. But trees are not by nature and should not be solitary, torn from the vast network they create and maintain. We think of a copse, a forest, a woodland, a grove. These are the homes of trees, roots entwined with one another, different species, some overshading others, yet sharing an exchange of nutrients depending on which trees had access to sunlight and when. Shorter conifers having access to sunlight in the winter months, taller deciduous trees when their leaves come out in the spring, gathering in the sun. Each helping the other, each exchanging nutrients as needed, and all joined by that vast network of fungi, conduits of those nutrients, and perhaps more intriguingly of signals and warnings. Trees that help to form the great network of life, the framework that supports nematodes, worms, insects, birds, chipmunks and squirrels, you and me. Trees that will, in the coming months, put forth buds, leaves, flowers, and fruit. Trees that will invite us to wander in their shade, and even in the depths of winter, offer the opportunity to reflect, as they did in a spring, which was to come to Changsha in Case 36 of the Blue Cliff Record, a case entitled Changsha Goes Picnicking. One day, Changsha went off to wander in the mountains. When he returned, the head monk of the temple met him at the gate and asked, "Where have you been?" "I've been strolling about in the hills." "Which way did you go?" "I went out following the scented grass and came back chasing the falling flowers." "That's exactly the feeling of spring," said the head monk. "It's better than autumn dew falling on the lotuses," said Changsha. And Sui Do commented, "I'm grateful for your reply." There are many ways to take this koan. I, for now and in this moment, would retell it as a presentation of the teachings of the insentient, the scented grasses, the falling flowers, the shaded trees, the sky overhead on a mountain walk, perhaps the mountain itself. Though far too many of us would not give trees more than a passing glance, they are most certainly not inanimate, not simply the background against which we live out our busy, distracted lives. If we're to give credence to Lynn Margulis and others, the vast earth itself, Gaia, is a living, breathing thing, animate and perhaps even sentient. I recall Pope Francis getting bollocksed up when he responded from his heart to a young boy who asked if his pet dog had gone to heaven when he died. "Of course," responded the Pope, leading the more orthodox theologians to having to pick up the pieces of that particular stale piece of dogma that only humans have souls. But it's a simple point. We can look in one another's eyes and know that you and I are conscious, sentient, ensouled, if you must use that language. And I can look into the eyes of my cat, my son's dog, that crow sitting on my back fence, and know there's a spark of consciousness there. And perhaps more than just a spark, but surely sentience must exist in all manner of forms, on all manner of different time scales, and supported by all manner of different substrates. And even the inanimate are not to be denied sentience, if a sentience that we cannot or will not yet acknowledge. The great 13th century Japanese Zen priest and theologian Eihei Dogen told the following story. Once a monastic asked the Tang Dynasty Chinese national teacher Nanyang, "Do the insentient understand the expressing of the way?" The national teacher said, "They express the way continually, energetically, ceaselessly." The monastic asked, "Why can't I hear it?" The national teacher replied, "The fact that you don't hear it has nothing to do with others hearing it." The monastic asked, "I don't understand. Who can hear it?" The national teacher said, "All the realized ones can hear it." The monastic asked, "Do you hear it?" The national teacher said, "I do not hear it." The monastic said, "If you do not hear it, how do you know that the insentient can express the way?" The national teacher said, "It is fortunate that I do not hear it. If I did, I would be a realized one and you would not be able to hear me expressing the way." The monastic said, "In that case, sentient beings can't hear it." The national teacher said, "I express the way for the sake of sentient beings, not for the sake of the realized ones." The monastic said, "Then what happens when sentient beings do hear you?" The national teacher said, "At that moment, they're not sentient beings." The dualities that seem so central to modern life, life and death, animate and inanimate, sentient and insentient, don't have the centrality of place in our tradition of Zen Buddhism. The distinctions are there and not there. You and I are separate. Separate and distinct, we are also one and the same, indistinguishable. And so, listening to the wind rustling through the trees out back, we hear both the trees and the way itself. The poet Layman Dong Po, lying in bed on an evening, wrote, "Sounds of the streams are nothing but a great tongue. The forms of mountains are none other than the Buddha's body of purity. 84,000 verses since last night. How shall I explain them tomorrow?" And Dong Po's near contemporary, Hildegard von Bingen, far off in the Rhineland of what would become Germany, wrote, "And this image spoke, but I am also the fiery life of the essence of divinity. I flame above the beauty of the fields, and I shine in the waters, and I burn in the sun, the moon, and the stars. With the airy wind I rouse to life all things with some invisible life, which sustains all things." All things. So who speaks for the trees? Perhaps the Lorax, though he is fictional, just a character in a book, a children's book at that. He speaks to those kids and their parents lucky enough to have copies of the book. A book, of course, printed on the very flesh of those trees Theodore Geisel sought to protect. William O. Douglas, the Supreme Court Justice, who famously wrote in dissent that trees, valleys, rivers, and meadows should have the standing to bring suit in a court of law for the wrongs we inflict on them. He's dead, and though his dissent lives on, still it's just a dissent, and if the current court hears the voices of the insentient, they seem only to manifest in the voices of corporations, a more successful, if fictional, character. And the trees themselves, as articulate as they may be among themselves in the world of roots and fungi, are no more understandable to us than are the songs of the hunchback whales, another species that seems to save its poetry for non-human ears. No, if anyone is to speak for the trees and have their voices make a difference, it will have to be us. It will have to be you, and you, and you, and me, speaking, shouting, not to the trees. They already know what's up. No, we must speak to each other on behalf of that part of the world, inseparable from us, that speaks intimately in a tongue we have chosen not to hear. Thank you.